Point of view. You click on this video and you're like, Edrea, why are you reviewing movies you saw in 2021 when it's literally almost April in 2022? Well, I do have an answer for you, and that is because I procrastinate. So the first movie I watched in 2021 was The Founder. I honestly don't remember much of this film except that he was kind of a jerk. Catch Me If You Can is solid. It's about a con man that impersonates a doctor, a lawyer, and a pilot, and about the FBI agent that chases him down the whole movie. Riveting, hilarious, and one of my favorite Leonardo DiCaprio films that's actually a true story. Bonnie and Clyde. You know what's the most romantic date night idea? Robbing banks together. Julie and Julia is my go-to feel-good movie. If it's that time of the month, if you know what I mean, 9 times out of 10, you can find me eating instant noodles in bed watching this. Les Mis is a classic. I still listen to its songs on Spotify. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is supposedly a classic, but I found it a little bit drawn out at times. Thelma and Louise, think Bonnie and Clyde, but female and badass. Inside Out is not my favorite Pixar film, but it's strikingly creative, so I have to give it that. Ooh, The Florida Project is a beautiful, heartfelt depiction of the cycle of poverty viewed through a child's eyes. We follow Mooney, a mischievous 6-year-old growing up in a motel right outside Disney World. It's a story about love and empathy and innocence and growing up in a place that the world has, quite frankly, given up on. I cried a lot in the end. It's just so good. Hillbilly Elegy was mediocre and forgettable. Tenet, okay, here's the tea. I love Christopher Nolan, but Tenet wasn't the challenging and cool type of confusing that Nolan films usually are. It was the kind of confusing where I don't understand it, and I don't care enough to try to understand. The Insider is a true story about a chemist that blows the whistle on a big tobacco company he's working for, and how the company went to great and scary lengths to try to stop him. In an era of powerful corporations trying to cover their asses, I found this refreshingly relevant. Moonrise Kingdom is about 2 kids that run away together, and it's very Wes Anderson. And then I rewatched The Dark Knight. Y'all already know I watch this movie like every month. If you haven't watched it, what? Just put everything down, go watch it, thank me later. Bridesmaids. I honestly don't know why I enjoyed this as much as I did. It's just a fun time. The Untouchables is about a quadriplegic millionaire and his new caregiver and how they mutually inspire each other to grow. It's a bit of a cliche story, but it's still heartwarming nonetheless. The White Tiger is set in India. It's about a driver that goes to extreme lengths to try to escape from poverty. It has a lot of fun twists and style, but I'm kind of conflicted on whether the portrayal of poverty was actually more harmful than good. Megamind, aka the movie my dad forces the entire family to watch every school break. It's actually criminally underrated though. If you watch it when you're an adult, you'll find that it has surprisingly well-timed humor. Like, who gave it the right? Snowpiercer takes place in a future ice age where the only people left on Earth are on a perpetually moving train. There's commentary on social divides because the people at the back of the train are poor and eat insect protein bars for dinner. And as you move your way up the train, there's like education and sashimi. It's a little bit gimmicky, but it's still a pretty fun ride. Or should I say train ride? Okay, it's kind of lame. Moving on. After watching Snowpiercer, I had a craving to rewatch Parasite. I actually didn't like this movie the first time I watched it, but I had cravings to rewatch it while still telling people I didn't like it. So after the 4th time I rewatched it, I was like, okay, fine, it's a good movie. Isle of Dogs is about a boy's quest to find his lost dog in future Japan, where all the dogs are banished to an island of garbage. Actually, I thought it was pretty cute, though I acknowledge there is some degree of white savior tropes and cultural appropriation in this one. So, I don't know. Marriage Story is such a beautiful and genuine story about divorce, as well as love, and how the two aren't necessarily mutually exclusive sometimes. Literally one of my favorite films ever, and that opening sequence is just chef's kiss. Dark Knight Rises was not as good as The Dark Knight, but I I'm not too mad about it. The Prestige is about two rival magicians that sacrifice literally everything to upstage one another. It explores obsession in a really intense and thrilling way. I expected nothing less of our boy Nolan. Lady Bird is a coming-of-age story that explores the mother-daughter dynamic pretty darn well. The main character is stubborn, but just bursting at the seams with character. Carol, oh, the atmosphere of this film is just gorgeous. It makes you feel at once peaceful and uneasy at the same time. There's something really enchanting about this film and I couldn't put it down. Her is one of my favorite movies ever. So basically in the future, the world has become so addicted to their devices and so devoid of empathy that the main character literally writes love letters for other people, and that's his job. Also, he starts dating his computer. So yeah, there's that. I feel like I'm selling it really badly. It's actually a masterpiece. Raya and the Last Dragon. As a Southeast Asian individual, I really wanted to love this one, but I didn't. Rain Man has a lot of emotional, hilarious, and compelling scenes. Also, this movie is really fun to watch with other people. Okay, so now we are moving into the part of the year where I binged all the 2021 Oscar nominees, so hang in there. The Trial of the Chicago 7 was just a very forgettable courtroom drama, or maybe I'm just not the political type. I don't know. Minari. I love this movie. It's a story about a Korean American family that moves to Arkansas in the 80s to start a farm, and along the way it explores love, family, identity, and the American dream. It's moving and I teared up a lot in the end. It was great. Nomadland follows a woman in her 60s who lives out of a van by choice after losing everything in the Great Recession. Gritty, compelling, beautiful visuals. Sound of Metal is one of the best of the Oscar season in my opinion. It's essentially about a heavy metal drummer who's slowly going deaf. The ending scene lives in my head rent-free. I think about it at random points throughout the day, even now. Promising Young Woman had a very entertaining and fresh take on gender dynamics and misogyny. It had a lot of fun twists and did get a little bit weird at times. Mank. Okay, David Fincher has made some of my best films of all time, but I couldn't get through this one. The Father is my new favorite movie. I watched this entire year. It explores dementia in a way that is so frightening and powerful and moving and brilliant. It just completely broke my heart. I highly recommend it. Crazy Stupid Love. I hate to say I enjoyed this, but I did. Sadly. Brain on Fire made my brain catch on fire from watching this mess of a movie. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was my favorite movie growing up as a kid. On the real though, it's an animation movie that remembers not to take itself too seriously, and that's a good thing. Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. So moving on. Crazy Rich Asians was interesting for me. My family's actually Singaporean and my parents immigrated from there and they really liked this film, though I have a lot of relatives in Singapore that didn't think that the film represented their culture accurately, and I agree. Though we haven't seen a cast like this in a long time, so I think we're making progress here. One Night in Miami is pretty much Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown sitting in a room and talking. It really should have been a play and not a movie because they barely moved from the room the entire time. Call Me By Your Name is a movie that transports you to a really passionate, romantic summer in 1980s Italy. The whole movie felt like a really comforting memory of summer romance and desire. Luca, basically Call Me By Your Name, but with animation and sea monsters. Searching is about a father that tries to find his missing daughter by searching for clues on her laptop. It sounds pretty cliche, but the entire movie is just what's happening on the main character's computer screen. It's actually pretty cool, but the ending I felt was a bit cheap. Cruella has massive Devil Wears Prada vibes. I had really low expectations for this film because, I mean, it's a Disney live action movie, but I was surprisingly entertained the entire time, and that confused me. Juno is about a high school girl that gets pregnant and tries to find the perfect couple to adopt her unborn child. It was witty and charming. Gone Girl, aka the movie that made me a David Fincher fan. Basically, the media starts to blame the main character for the sudden disappearance of his wife. It's a movie about two very, very toxic people, and the writing just completely blew me away. A Quiet Place 2 was not as good as the first one, and the concept is getting kinda old now. Wish Dragon was basically just Aladdin, but make it Chinese, though I probably would have had a crush on the main character in middle school, not gonna lie. I rewatched Noshka in the Valley of the Wind. I don't need to even say this, but Miyazaki is a genius. The Mitchells vs. the Machines, I know a lot of people like this one, but there were a lot of big tech and machine learning jokes that I just found cringe. The Grand Budapest Hotel, I don't know how to describe it, but this movie looks like one giant cupcake. Like, I just want to eat it. My Octopus Teacher. Okay, this changed the game for me. I don't watch as many documentaries as I should, but this one explored humanity's inherent connection to the natural world in a way that I've never seen done as immersively as this movie. Bo Burnham, Inside, is good to watch if you're lonely and have existential dread. Memoirs of a Geisha is just a long drama about a Japanese geisha in the 1920s. The movie is also historically inaccurate. I mean, the story is based on the most famous geisha in Japan, and she sued for defamation. So, T. Terminator 2 is one of those rare instances where the sequel is actually better than the first one. I remember this is the first R-rated film I ever watched, and it opened me up to just millions of other stories out there. I owe a lot to this film, and it's a classic. Chinatown is a really solid and thrilling movie. There's this one line in the movie, okay, I'm not gonna say it because it's a major spoiler, but if you watch it, you'll know which one I mean. Casablanca is just one of those classic films that you just have to watch if you're into cinema, but it's also really enjoyable and romantic. I loved it. Miss Americana. Okay, I grew up listening to Taylor Swift, and I thought this documentary about how she came into herself as a singer and a pop icon was pretty interesting to watch. Philomena? I don't even know. True story about an unmarried teenager who got pregnant in a Catholic convent and got her baby taken away from her. So 50 years later, she and a journalist go on a search for her long-lost son. I really liked this one when I watched it, but I actually don't remember much of it. Okay, so we've reached the part of the year where I had an Edgar Wright binge because I was trying to get inspiration when starting YouTube, so here goes. Baby Driver is about a getaway driver that wants to escape from his life of crime. Edgar Wright's best looking movie by far. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Out of all the Edgar Wright films, I like this one the least. Hot Fuzz is his funniest movie by far. I actually really enjoyed this one. It was classic Edgar Wright with all the fast cuts and the humor. I think this is my favorite out of his movies. Then finally, I watched Shaun of the Dead. This one also had really good humor. Little Miss Sunshine is about a really messed up family trying to get their young daughter into a beauty pageant across the country. Dark humor, witty screenplay, cute kid. And then I watched Kung Fu Panda and Kung Fu Panda 2. Don't ask, my sister and I were just getting bored of the options on Netflix. Memento is about a man with short-term memory loss trying to track down his wife's murder. The strange thing about this movie is that it actually makes more sense being played backwards rather than forwards, which is kinda cool. Chocolat. If you've ever wanted to see an ultra-conservative community get set free by the power of chocolate, this one's for you. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings started off really well and then introduced way too many fantastical characters and plot points that I couldn't care less about, aka classic Marvel. Okay, I'm gonna get attacked for saying that, so moving on. So after watching that movie, I needed more Tony Leung, so I watched In the Mood for Love. So basically the two main characters move in across the hall from each other and both of their spouses are cheating on them with each other, and then the whole movie is just the two main characters trying with all their willpower to not do the same with each other. Though maybe that would be a very convenient affair scenario, like 2 unhappy marriages. Just trade spouses, problem solved. Star Trek. I literally rewatched this just because I suddenly remembered I'm currently going to Chris Pine's alma mater. Go Bears. Inception. No surprise here, I've rewatched this movie so many times. This movie, The Dark Knight, and Interstellar are the reasons why I'm forever basic and will consider Nolan my favorite director of all time. If you haven't watched it, it's basically the concept of breaking into other people's dreams, and it's really freaking revolutionary. Gladiator. I enjoyed this one, but I gotta warn you, it's really historically inaccurate. Joaquin Phoenix did a really good job of making me hate him, which is really impressive because I love him. I also rewatched Interstellar. I think you can see a common trend with me rewatching Nolan films and giving them all 5s. You know how there are some movies you watch that are not just movies, they're experiences that expand your worldview and remind you that the universe is just so much bigger than you could ever possibly be. Yeah, Interstellar does that for me, and it's awesome. Dune. Visually, it's There's no words to describe it. Imagining that universe with all its complexities and beauty on the screen is just truly an achievement. Story-wise though, it's ultimately a setup for part 2. I haven't read the book, so I don't think I have the most credibility here, but to me, it felt like 3 hours of buildup with no payoff. Meet Joe Black. If death looked like Brad Pitt, let's just say I wouldn't be filming this right now. American Beauty. Okay, let's just say this movie did not age well. Basically, a suburban dad trapped inside a dead-end, unhappy life falls in love with his daughter's best friend. He has a whole midlife crisis and lashes out in strange ways and finds some kind of freedom in doing so. Personally, I really like this movie. I love a good story about a person trapped in a bad life and escaping somehow and finding freedom, but it's still a bit controversial and I can definitely see why. The real tea is that the actor is Kevin Spacey, so maybe he wasn't acting that much at all. Leon the Professional, I just felt like there was a lot of senseless violence and not enough commentary, but it is highly rated, so. I, Tonya is such a spunky, fresh, and fun film. Someone called it the Goodfellas of figure skating, and I think that's the best way to describe it. The Green Mile is about guards in charge of inmates on death row. One day they discover that one of the prisoners has this supernatural gift, and that kind of introduces a moral dilemma among the guards. I really enjoyed this one. It was captivating and made you really care about the characters, though it did get kind of strange at times, so. The Shape of Water is The Little Mermaid, but strictly for adults. Tick Tick Boom, I have mixed feelings. It's a true story about an aspiring theater composer who's about to turn 30. We watch him struggle with love, friendship, and the temptation to settle for something more stable in his career. Personally, I felt like it took a little too long to pick up, and they were trying to convey a similar message to La La Land, but did a worse job at it. I also rewatched The Matrix to prep myself for The Matrix Resurrections. What can I say? Classic film, fantastic effects. I wrote my college essay on this movie, if that says anything. Looper was like Cyberpunk meets Black Mirror meets Terminator. So basically in the future, it becomes so hard to dispose of bodies that when the mafia wants to kill someone, they send them back in the past to be killed by an assassin there who's called a looper. Joe is a looper who one day is about to kill someone who's sent back, like usual, until he discovers that person is his future self. So, pretty cool concept. I enjoyed this one. Home Alone. Yep, it's that time of the year again, or it was when I watched this. Classic Christmas movie, heartwarming message, cute kid. What can I say? Ratatouille. I could go on a whole rant about how this movie is a subtle commentary about the rat race and explores the privilege between the affluent and the poor in the pursuit of one's passions and the struggle of being born on the wrong side of that divide, but I won't get into it. King Richard depicts how Richard Williams trained Venus and Serena Williams to become the tennis superstars that they are today. Honestly, the movie was fine, though I feel like it was just Richard being stubborn for 2.5 hours. But hey, his parenting style worked, I guess. A Christmas Carol. You know how everyone has that one holiday movie that they unfailingly watch every December? A Christmas Carol is that movie for my family. It's a fantastic visual experience with heartfelt storytelling. I feel like it's criminally underrated. And I watched Joker for the second time. I really liked this film the first time I watched it, and I still do. But the second time I watched it, I realized that it was less of a Joker origin story and more like Joaquin Phoenix losing his shit for 2 hours, which is still amazing. The Matrix Resurrections, this was by far the best movie of the franchise. Just kidding, it was trash. Don't Look Up could have shrunk its 2-hour, 20-minute runtime to 1 hour and we would have had the same movie. The Big Short. While I didn't like Don't Look Up, it got me interested in Adam McKay's films, and thank God it did, because I really liked this one. It was charming, witty, hilarious, and managed to make investing really fun. Ex Machina is basically a long Black Mirror episode featuring a sexy robot. What's Eating Gilbert Grape is literally one of my favorite films ever. It's essentially about a family with a whole lot of problems in a town where nothing much ever happens. The main character is constantly running around making sure his family's okay, until one day a stranger shows up and inspires him to live his life for himself. It's so empowering and moving and heartfelt. They don't make films like this nowadays, so I highly recommend it. American Psycho. Some people say that this movie is a commentary on men's vanity and narcissism, and I actually agree. Though I didn't really enjoy it, I felt like there was just a lot of violence and It's just not my thing. 2001: A Space Odyssey is so iconic. It's just one of those films that you have to watch if you're into cinema. While it's not my favorite film ever, I acknowledge that it's revolutionized filmmaking and inspired generations of filmmakers to make movies, and that is just so amazing. Then I rewatched Howl's Moving Castle. Again, Miyazaki is a genius. This movie is literally my laptop wallpaper, if that says anything. Encanto, while not my favorite Disney film, this movie tackles the mature message of intergenerational trauma that I don't see a lot in films, let alone in Disney animated feature films. Also, We Don't Talk About Bruno is an absolute banger. The Lost Daughter, in a nutshell, having kids ruins your life permanently. And to end the year, the last film I watched in 2021 was Iron Man. I rewatched it with my sister while waiting for the New Year's countdown. I feel like this one doesn't need much of an explanation. Robert Downey Jr. just brings this character to life in a way that makes it one of the best superhero films of all time. So yeah, there you have it, all 104 movies I watched in 2021. Let me know if you guys like this content, and I hope you found some film recommendations. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.